czar, Tom Homan. Now, Tom, if that is not good enough for Chris Van Hollen, who traveled to El Salvador today to check on this aggrieved prisoner, or the folks over at some of the other cable networks, then I guess they'll have proven all of our points tonight.
You mean Chris Van Hollen, the guy that didn't want to sign the Lake and Riley Act that protects American citizens against illegal alien criminal gang members? Who, instead of protecting Americans, his constituents, his taxpayers, he goes to El Salvador and defends an illegal alien with a deportation order that's a member of MS-13 that's been designated a terrorist organization by President Trump. That's where he went to defend it. It's just disgusting. The same senator who state yesterday released an illegal alien charged with murder, refused the ICE detainer, hit the street. So rather than protecting his community, protecting the residents of Maryland, he goes to El Salvador to coddle an MS-13 gang member terrorist. It's ridiculous. And also, I talked to an MS-13 expert today who also showed me pictures of his hand, where he says absolutely the tattoo on one of his hands was absolutely an MS-13 gang tattoo, nothing questionable about it. 2 judges said he's an MS-13 member. ICE says he's an MS-13 member. Intelligence community says he's an MS-13 member. El Salvador says he's an MS-13 member. So, you know, it's just ridiculous. And as far as all the people who are speaking out against this, I cannot believe for a minute there's that many stupid people in the world. Now, AOC, on the smart meter, she's a 0. We'll give them that. But I can't believe these people really believe what they're saying. They got to be just pushing a narrative for political reasons. They can't be that dumb to think that that this person is an MS-13 gang member and a public safety threat.
Tom, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, yesterday said that he was also involved in human trafficking. Is there evidence of that in addition to the MS-13 evidence?
There's some information in some files that he may have been involved in human trafficking. MS-13 are famous for human trafficking. MS-13 are famous for bringing little girls into our country, minors, and prostituting them and putting them in the forced sex trade. They have also known in high schools to take young girls and bring them into the gang and put them on the street to prostitute. That's one of the main causes of their finances is prostitution of young girls across the United States. MS-13's in over 20 countries across the globe. They're actually in I think they're in 48 states in the United States now. They're a big organization. But you know where they're not? You know where they're not active? El Salvador. Because President Bukele shut them down. They don't exist on the streets in El Salvador.
Are you concerned about Judge Boasberg's contempt order and the discussion surrounding that, given this consensus among the elite legal set, Tom, that you all are defying, essentially defying the Supreme Court here?
No. Look, I've been doing this job since 1984, and I worked for the greatest president in my lifetime. I don't care if people like me saying that or not. He proves it every day. We secure the border. Today, while I'm talking to you, the border's the most secure in the history of this nation. He did that in 7 weeks, and Biden couldn't do it in 4 years. We have arrested more criminal alien gang members, public safety threats, and national security threats in 2 months than Joe Biden did in 2 years. No, I think we did the right thing. Law enforcement professionals at ICE, they swear under oath that this person is MS-13. Again, you got 2 federal judges saying it's MS-13. I think we did the right thing. As far as the notion that, well, he had a withholding order not to be removed to El Salvador, he's not an illegal alien. He's just not an illegal alien anymore. He's a designated terrorist. There's a different level of due process for terrorists. So I think we stand by our guns. I think we did the right thing, and I think the Attorney General of the United States agrees that we did the right thing. So we'll stand by that.
All right, Tom, thank you, as always. For
the White House wrapping up a briefing with shocking new information on the media's so-called Maryland dad, the alleged MS-13 gang member, Abbrego Garcia. Caroline Leavitt was joined by the mother of Rachel Morin. Her daughter was brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant. Here's Caroline.
The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmar Abbrego Garcia as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Abbrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country.
That comes as Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen went to El Salvador in order to fetch his Salvadorian constituent that he claims was, quote, illegally abducted.
This is about due process. This is about rule of law. What bullies do is they begin by picking on the most vulnerable.
I just landed at the airport in San Salvador a little while ago. I'm now en route into the city. The goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abbrego Garcia. I won't stop trying, and I can assure the president, the vice president, that I may be the first United States senator to visit El Salvador on this issue, but there will be more, and there will be more members of Congress coming.
And at the briefing, Rachel Morin's mother ripped her senator's trip.
Of a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this.
All right, Harold, I'll start with you. What we found out is the Maryland father was not working at Home Depot, as was represented here yesterday. He was one of the illegals standing outside waiting to be picked up, as they often do, to get a job for cash under the table. In addition, we also have the police report indicating the reasons why he was identified as MS-13. We also have 2 court orders saying that Abbrego Garcia was an MS-13 gang member and needed to be deported. And in addition to that, the father of the year, Abbrego Garcia, that a United States senator who never called Rachel Morin's mother, who was a constituent of his, is going to see El Salvador. The man he's going to see, his common law wife, we don't even know if they were really married, filed 2, not once, but 2 orders of protection against him for assaulting her, for punching her, scratching her, ripping off her shirt, and beating her. So we've got domestic violence, MS-13, court orders, and not only that, he didn't even come into this country through a port of entry. He's one of the gotaways. He was too dangerous. He knew he wouldn't have been let in. So why is the senator going there, Harold?
Well, he has every right to go. First, it's good to be with you. He has every right as a U.S. senator to go wherever he wants. And Ms. Morin,
nobody's questioning that.
And Ms. Morin I was moved by her words, Judge, I think we all were, and by reminding us of that terrible, awful, tragic story that her daughter had to endure and what the pain that it has caused her and her family. I separate the two for really a single reason. I think this situation with the Garcia guy, it appears that the court has said that they want the lawyers for Mr. Garcia and the lawyers for the government to be deposed, and for evidence to be presented to the court that Mr. Garcia fits the description that some of what you just described there, Judge, in terms of his status in the country, his MS-13 status, whatever that may be. And if these things are all true, then he should certainly be deported and maybe even worse things done. But it appears that's where the gulf is here. But it is, I'm so moved by Ms. Morin's story, it's hard to even talk about Senator Van Hollen, who has the right to be there, and Ms. Morin, who I was pleased to hear and happy to hear her share her story, as hard as it may have been for her to share it. I do hope that the judge's extortions to both the defense, the government, and the plaintiffs She said that everybody to cancel their vacation and to cancel other time and to be back before the court with this evidence, because I think the country deserves to hear this, and certainly this family deserves to know if this guy was indeed a member of MS-13.
All right, Jesse, I'm gonna spin right off of what Harold just said. Harold is talking about Judge Boasberg, I assume.
No, I'm talking about the judge in the case with the Mr. Garcia. The Boasberg case, he spoke a little differently, but
right.
yes, we're kind of conflating two things here. Okay. But I'm talking about, I can't think of her last name. Zinni. I'm talking about Judge Zinni. Yes.
So, Jesse, the fact that an immigration court and an immigration appeals court has already made the decision that Abbrego Garcia should be deported indicates to me, as a former judge and a prosecutor, that he has already been given due process. And in fact, this further information is even more reason why he should stay in El Salvador, as if we could go there and bring him back here to deport him yet again.
Well, he's getting a great hearing because his law firm represents notorious gang members. His law firm represents Aaron Hernandez, Bloods, represented Bobby Shmurda, GS9 out of Brooklyn, represents a trafficking syndicate that does deals with the cartels. So somehow this Maryland dad gets the best gang-affiliated law firm in the country to do this guy's case. He illegally immigrates into the country under Barack Obama, gets pulled over 5 times in Maryland, but never gets deported because they're a sanctuary state, and blows off every hearing. Then he gets an American woman pregnant, doesn't marry her, none of my business. He gets picked up in a gang sweep. It was a murder investigation. They bring him in. He had $1,000 cash. He had a Bulls hat with the logo of the Horns, MS-13. He had a sweatshirt on, hear no evil, see no evil, MS-13. They ask him about human trafficking. All of a sudden he goes, oh, I'm really afraid to go back to El Salvador. They might kill me. The judge doesn't let him out on bond because he's a flight risk and he's a danger to the community. He appeals. Another judge says no, doesn't uphold the asylum claim. Again, affirms he's designated MS-13. The only reason he's not deported back to El Salvador then is because his great lawyers say he's going to be killed by a rival gang. But they let him out. But he can be deported at any time. But guess who doesn't do it? Joe Biden. Then what does he do? He allegedly beats his wife. Not once, but twice. Closed fist. Still not deported. Trump becomes president. He designates MS-13 a terrorist organization. That means it vacates the hold on the deportation to El Salvador. He can be deported to El Salvador. They put him on a plane and he's there. The lawyers want to go back, reopen the case with the immigration judge. It's a clerical issue. It reopens. He gets deported back to El Salvador. Case closed. The fact that this guy wanted to put Trump in prison, but get this guy out of prison, an MS-13 terrorist who's accused of hitting his wife, is crazy.
You know, Dana, the Rachel Morin's mother, and I think we really have to talk about that, is one of many, many mothers in this country who have lost daughters in a horrific way, some of them as young as 11, to illegals who were never vetted by the Biden administration. And yet the left and a United States senator is on the wrong side of the issue. Instead of fighting for American citizens in a 90-10 issue at this point, he's fighting to make sure that an illegal dirtbag gang member who's an abuser is okay. What is wrong with the Democrats?
So you'd like to believe that the senator and his team didn't think this through, right? You'd like to believe that this was a lapse in judgment, but they did think it through. They think this is the right thing to do. I feel like if this was an episode of Veep, you might believe it more, but unfortunately it is the reality that he was part of the big cover-up of Biden's mental capacities. He was somebody who, yes, he did talk about Rachel Morin. He did. He has done statements, but he never called her.
Right.
And this is obviously a woman who wants to talk about what happened to her daughter and to make sure justice is done so that it never happens to another daughter. That is her main mission. And it is remarkable how many women who have lost their daughters or their sons, even if it's on fentanyl or something that is gang related as well, right? The cartels bringing the drugs into the country. How many of the mothers are able to be so poised And I didn't realize, we were taking it live, but Greg said to me that the other cable channels didn't take it.
No surprise.
And like, this is an opportunity, as a unique opportunity in the briefing room, and you might not want to hear it. And it is really hard to listen to, and your heart breaks for her. And I can understand that. I'm sure they're back in the Senator's office saying, but the rule of law. And there is a question on the law here. That's obviously, it's being dealt with in the courts. The Justice Department fighting as hard as they can, releasing new information. I think you made a good point about the foreign terrorist organization, which vacated the previous. All of that can get teased out. What can't be forgotten is that President Trump ran on this issue. It was the #1 issue with the American people, along with the highest prices that they have paid for goods in their lives. And the president, and what Caroline Leavitt did today, is say, we're not going to forget. And in fact, we're going to put this right in your face so that you can't forget. And even if the other cables didn't take it, doesn't matter. This story is front and center, and it will be. This guy is now going to be like the poster child for, you want to have this fight? We'll have it. It kind of reminds me in a little bit of a way of talking about going after terrorism. You're either with us or against us. And the media for a long time was like, well, we don't really know what to do about that. But then they became, if you guys remember, they fought pretty vigorously in the press against tactics to make sure that terrorists couldn't hurt us.
You know, Greg, aside from the legal, I mean, you've got the immigration courts that said you're gone. And you've got foreign terrorist organization under the Alien Enemies Act. You've got two separate. I don't know, the one vacates the other. They're both legitimate reasons to get this guy out of here. What is going on?
It's amazing. You look at the mother, and then you can hear Van Hollen's words about who the most vulnerable is. He's talking about the gangbanger. The effing Democrats, you can offer them two sides, and they can't help but pick the wrong one. You know, for years, we've dealt with unfettered illegal immigration, with consequences felt in our cities and in our morgues. And now we stop it. And who do they side with? An illegal with a history of violence who beats women. Good job, Dems. You never fail us. Whether it's Antifa, BLM, Hamas, is there any dirtbag that you won't embrace for political reasons? And how many traps do the Democrats and the media lead people into? It always ends the same way. The border agent whipped the migrant. Oh my God, I can't believe. Oh, that didn't happen. Oh, I'm sorry. Musk is a Nazi. I'm going to go out and key cars. Oh, you're being filmed. Now you're going to jail for 20 years. Why did you listen to them? Trans kids are real. Oh, now you find out it's just some kind of bizarre experimentation on children. And oh, I didn't know that. Hey, there's white supremacy in the military. No, just CRT and DEI. Trump is Hitler. No, he's not, but he gets shot. The P-tape is real. The laptop is fake. Joe Biden is as sharp as a tack. Do you notice this? How long are you going to put up with this crap where they lead you down a path for a political reason and you find out you're in quicksand? What is more repulsive to me is how the media still thinks it can decide what your priorities are, what people in the world you should care about. They plant this idea of this one man in your head and say, why don't you care about them? This is after they ignored illegals coming in, crime in every city, suffering of young women pushed in front of subway trains, raped and murdered. You want to George Floyd this guy? Go for it. Go for it. Because you know how that turned out, right? You saw the autopsy. You didn't care about that. All this is scoring symbolic virtue points. The Democrats pick and choose their victims based on how it helps them politically and how it can be exploited for public sentiment. But every person at home, you know the concentric circles of caring. You, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your community. A creep from El Salvador, he can't jump that line. This is a border that he can't cross. And every time the libs try to cross that border into your house, you have to fight back. I'm so happy that we got this truth out there and shut all these people up.
You are so right.
Thank you.
It's not about due process. It's about them being incapable of empathizing for American citizens.
They should let him go, and we will find a way to get him from San Salvador to Maryland.
Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. The #1 issue they are focused on right now is bringing back this illegal alien terrorist to America.
To have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. I don't understand this.
That's Patty Morin. She lost her daughter, Rachel, was killed by an illegal immigrant in Maryland. She was at the White House today, actually went to the Oval Office. President had talked to her and met her before on the campaign trail, obviously, giving her a hug there in the Oval Office, expressing condolences for Rachel. And obviously this comes in the context of Senator Van Hollen going to El Salvador to try to bring forward Garcia, the man who is down there, lived in Maryland, illegal immigrant, and the administration says and points out that previous courts had found him to be a member of MS-13. Others have disputed that, including his wife. So let's start there with our panel. Josh Kraushaar is a Fox News radio political analyst, USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers, and former Republican National Committee Communications Director Doug Heye. Doug, what do you make of this and where it's falling out?
Well, I think it's falling in multiple directions, and you have the policy, you have the politics and the principles involved. You know, ultimately what Senator Van Hollen is talking about with the principle of due process and that this has been a mistake is correct. But the politics here also play a very real role. Democrats are focusing a lot of political energy on this, and it's also providing Donald Trump with the opportunity to talk about something he hasn't talked about in a while, which is immigration. It's a very strong issue for Trump. He does very well on it. And with what we've seen at the border being sealed, obviously you talked to Secretary Burgum earlier, with the border being sealed and us not seeing that influx of people crossing over, it's been hard for Trump to talk about this. Both sides feel that they're at an advantage here, and this is why I think this is going to continue for a while.
Francesca?
Well, this is also playing out in the courts. The court had said that the administration has to facilitate the return of Abbrego Garcia, who is currently in El Salvador. And then the Supreme Court ruled the same thing. But the Supreme Court took issue with the idea that the administration had to effectuate his return. And the White House is saying that there's a big difference there, that they don't have to bring him back. Facilitate would say, well, we would put him on a plane and bring him here if the El Salvadorian government released him. And we saw, of course, this week when the El Salvadorian president was in the Oval Office, he said that he has no plans to do that. So now the Trump administration is still fighting this out in court.
And Josh, you know, we talk about the politics here. These legal battles are going forward on a number of different fronts. They are being met with appeals by the administration. But the politics is another thing.
Yeah, the politics of this is a little bit tricky because, as Doug mentioned, immigration is Trump's strongest issue and continues to be a strong issue for him. But this is rapidly becoming less of an issue about immigration and more an issue about not listening to judicial orders, of lack of due process. And that's why you have senators like Van Hollen going to El Salvador. Democrats, think that they may have some political hay on this issue. It is sort of stunning that the White House hasn't offered any concessions. I think they offered today, the Department of Justice put out some documents trying to make the case that he was a gang member, but this should have been dealt with in a court of law, not weeks after the fact, in a PR battle. So there is, I think, a little bit of political uncertainty. Immigration, a very strong issue for Republicans, but this is certainly becoming, with Judge Boasberg today, threatening contempt for the administration, becoming less an immigration issue, more law and order, and is the White House listening to the judicial branch?
And Brett, the word contempt is a very serious one. When I worked in the House leadership, we held Eric Holder, the Attorney General, in contempt because he wouldn't provide information that Congress had not just requested but had subpoenaed. When you start using words like contempt, things get very serious in a very legal way very quickly. And this is part of a difficult problem for the administration. It's not just political. The politics may help them. That's why they had the mother obviously come to the White House today. The word contempt is one to be very fearful of.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the legal battle continues. The DOJ suing the state of Maine over biological males competing in female sports. Take a listen.
Because there are maybe at most two transgender athletes competing in Maine schools right now, they decided to shut off funding. The law says if you don't like what a state or entity is doing over here, you can't take their funds away over here.
The lawsuit is filed as of this morning, so yes, we will be pulling funds from Maine. These are boys in a girls' locker room. One is too many.
So, Francesca, this is another battle the administration seems ready to have. The UNH poll of Mainers' view on transgender athletes participating in women's sports. There you see the overall 64-28, Democrats one way, Republicans the other. The independents 79-14. We saw that in the campaign. It was about an 80-20 issue.
Well, and this became one of the most high-profile clashes so far between President Trump and a Democratic governor at the White House in his second term when he got into it with Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, and she had said, "I'll see you in court." And the Trump administration today more or less saying, "We will see you there. We will see you in court." And this opens up another question for Democrats right now, which is how to handle President Donald Trump even when they don't like something he's doing. We have seen other governors try to work with him on some of these other issues, and then we've seen other Democratic governors try to fight back really hard in the courts on this issue or other issues such as his tariffs.
All right, meantime, the Trump tariff negotiations going on with Japan. Take a listen.
The president's deeply involved in this as well. He has made it clear to his trade team he wants to personally sign off on all of these deals.
This president wants to adjust our trade relations around the globe. I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think 90 days to kind of negotiate with dozens of countries, big consequential agreements, and then China's watching all this.
As you look to the long game, this economy is going to be booming in the long run. The president's going to get his golden age, and what we're doing now is laying the ground for that.
If you look at the split, Josh, on the trade deficit with Japan, it is a big one. It's one of the countries that the negotiations, if they come forward, would make potentially a difference. 12.4 exports to Japan. These are billions. 23.9 imports from Japan. And there you see the deficit. A lot of people are saying, Josh, that if you could get one of these deals to facilitate and be put forward, that it may open the door to others.
Yeah, I mean, the administration certainly could use some good news on the economy, could use some momentum. You're hearing about Japan, Vietnam, maybe the UK. That could lead to momentum elsewhere. But you still have some pretty big markets. You've got the EU. Obviously, you've got the big fight with China that is also putting a cloud over the economy. I think that would be very good news for the markets if some deals could be struck, because you heard the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, today raising the prospect of higher inflation and slower growth as a combination. So some good news on the markets, some good news on the trade deals could probably make that forecast look a little more encouraging.
Yeah, Doug, there is a sense that these deals are designed to continue to put the squeeze on China. Doesn't seem like there's a break for China, but these other deals may increase that pressure on China.
Certainly, it's part of why we're talking about Japan. Obviously, Trump wants to shift attention away from Europe and more into an Asian direction. But also, we have the Prime Minister of Italy coming this week to meet with Trump. And trade is certainly going to be a big part of, not just for Italy, but the entire EU, a big part of that conversation. And one of the challenges, I think, for Trump is here, we hear that they want to negotiate all these deals pretty rapidly. Negotiating trade deals is an excruciating long process. It's not speed dating. So to try and get 75 trade deals done in 75 days seems a really high bar to cross.
Yeah, it's ambitious. All right, panel, thanks. Let's bring in Fox News chief political analyst Brit Hume and Jonathan Turley, professor at the George Washington University Law School, to talk about this. Thank you both for being here. Jonathan, let me start with you. A lot of the talk about this as we see each one of these cases and each of the federal judges, we saw what the Supreme Court did on its ruling. It's being characterized by some as a constitutional crisis in the making. What say you about all this?
Well, I've always objected to the use of the term constitutional crisis because it underplays the resilience and success of our system. We have the oldest, most stable constitutional system in history. This isn't a crisis. We have a court system that will sort all of these things out. It's in the process of doing that. And what we've seen is that the Trump administration has won some cases, lost some cases, and all of them are on appeal. but we are dealing with novel questions. And the Supreme Court didn't help that much when it issued what seemed like a writ of facilitation in the case involving Garcia in El Salvador without defining what facilitation means. And the judge just yesterday said, basically, I feel unfacilitated. Well, okay, so where do we go from here? The Supreme Court has not been particularly clear on that point.
Yeah. Britt, meantime, you have Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland going down to El Salvador and recording, a number of messages throughout that, talking to the press down there. Here's what he said about what he's learning so far.
The United States Embassy here has told me they've received no direction from the Trump administration to help facilitate his release. So the Trump administration is clearly in violation of American court orders.
I mean, we're talking about the legal side of this, but what about the political side of all of this too, Britt?
It's a bit of a mystery to me, Brett, why Chris Van Hollen, who I think would like to run for president, is racing down to El Salvador to try to get a Salvadoran man who was illegally in the United States out of jail down there. Now, the courts are dealing with the question of whether he should have been put there and whether he should be brought back for due process or whatever. But in political terms, it's hard for me to imagine that many Americans will look at this guy and think he's a sympathetic victim. The administration has put forward a lot of information about the likelihood he was a gang member and a dangerous one at that, and that he'd apparently beaten his wife and so on. And so I guess what we think, these Democrats think, is that they are looking at a mandate from their most activist constituents to resist and fight and fight and fight. And so they're taking whatever opportunities to fight that they can. I'm not sure they're choosing them very wisely.
Jonathan, it does seem like a number of federal district judges are actively ruling. If you look at the headlines, federal judiciary versus Trump administration, judge blocks the Trump EPA from clawing back billions in Biden-era climate grants. Judge temporarily halts Trump administration move to end Biden-era migration program. Judge blocks Trump from retaliating against another top law firm. These are just some of them. Will the Supreme Court have to weigh in more definitively, to, besides the facilitate thing that we just talked about?
Well, the dock is getting pretty crowded, and I think that in cases like Garcia, by the way, it's extremely unlikely that Garcia will ever be back in this country. And all of these Democratic senators going down to El Salvador are about as significant as sending the Rockettes to El Salvador. It's not going to have any legal or even political significance for that case. For these other cases you mentioned, I think the administration is going to prevail on a number of those. These are district court judges that actually have been reversed in some cases on appeal. He's going to lose some as well. But that's something of the signature of Trump. I think he really learned that in real estate. He's sort of a maximalist. He asks for the maximum possible authority, and he often settles for something less than that. We have a court system that's designed to make those decisions. Now, will they hear all these cases? No. But I think the court is trying to send a message to these lower courts. In the last decision with Garcia, they sent, I thought, a pretty clear message that the forum shopping's got to end, that you cannot have these challengers just picking what they think are the best judges to secure these types of national injunctions.
And just to clarify, Jonathan, Judge Boasberg said that he may institute criminal contempt if the administration doesn't show why they ignored his order to stop the deportations, those flights. If that's the case and the Justice Department says they're not going to prosecute, how does that go forward?
Well, it could create a very difficult conflict because the marshals may be called upon to carry out those orders, and the marshals should, and the administration should not interfere with them, even though they could do so with their authority. It would go on appeal, and these types of sanctions are rare, and they have not done well on appeal. The Supreme Court does not look kindly upon the use of criminal contempt in these types of issues. These are messy cases, and I got to tell you, the court has indicated it desperately wants this cup to pass from its lips. But it's going to have to take a long and hard drink because all of these cases are careening towards the Supreme Court.
And very quickly, Britt, it seems like the administration is emboldened in these fights. It doesn't seem like they're backing down on any one of them.
I think that's right, Brad. And however these cases turn out legally, what the public is seeing is this administration is trying to kick illegal aliens out of the country. It's trying to block their entry at the southern border and elsewhere. And I think they believe, perhaps correctly, that the public is with them on this one, whether the judges are or not at the moment.
Britt, Jonathan, as always, thank you.
All right, well, Democrats, believe it or not, they're already beginning to zero in on the midterms. Believe it or not, they're closer than you think, and the playbook is taking shape. Now, the coordination, and I discussed this in the angle, is a core part of it. It's why we're hearing the same tired talking points. Joining me now, Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, this narrative that they're trying to turn on the Republicans about immigration, using words like Gestapo, and people are being abducted, even American citizens could be at risk. Do you think that this is a successful way for the Democrats to reconnect with Middle America?
Well, they lost the immigration issue very large in the last election, so now they're trying to reframe it. President Trump has now secured the border. So they want to change the topic. It's due process. You should be fearful even as an American. They want to confuse the issue. And it is talking points. You played an excellent clip where you showed a number of Democrats in different parts of the country on different shows, all using the same phrases: Gestapo, these scare tactics, pull up in vans, like somehow a citizen should be afraid. And they try to confuse people, not telling you that somebody is a murderer, somebody's an MS-13. No, they wave that all away. But that's really who they're working for. And this whole tour of AOC, it's all in congressional districts that they want to focus on to try to flip. So this is what they're trying to do, and they're trying to build for that case. The election is much sooner than people think. It's just around the corner.
Kevin, I want to talk about what Jerome Powell did today. He essentially came out and said that these tariffs, which the Democrats are going to seize on, obviously, that the tariffs are going to, likely to create some type of recession, and that will hurt U.S. growth forecasts going forward, which, obviously the Trump administration thinks the exact opposite about how these tariffs will work. But of course, that sent the market way down. And you can kind of see this little game playing out between Powell and the Trump administration. Do you think the Trump administration needs to come out in a full-throated manner and refute what the Fed chair said today about an issue that is still number one on the minds of all voters now and will be on the midterms?
Well, what he said is hurting the economy. The market reacts to what he said. Now, he only has a short amount of time left in this job, and I think there's some excellent people who could take this job going forward. But remember what President Trump has already done if you want to look at pure economics. He's getting people to invest billions of dollars in America because of his policies. That's only going to grow the economy. The Fed chair should be working for America, not scaring America. And this is really out of the playbook of the Democrats. There's two major issues of why President Trump won: securing the border and economics. And they're trying to undercut those two fundamental issues, so the administration should be very bold and keep laying out exactly what they're doing. So as soon as we get an agreement where I'm watching negotiating with Japan and others, this will be opening up markets that have been closed for decades to American products. Our markets are open up to them. Why is it wrong that we expect to be treated the same as we treat them?
Yeah, Powell tiptoed right up to politics today, in my view. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Two alleged murderers, an accused member of MS-13, and a terrorist sympathizer. These are the people held up and championed by Democrats. How are these their heroes? Joining me now to discuss, Pittsburgh-based columnist and Washington Examiner national political reporter Selena Zito. Selena, it just seems clear that it is a trend that your major issues that have been symbolized by a few individuals all are not criminals yet, but at least alleged criminals in many of these cases that they somehow have found their voice to champion.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting to watch who the Democrats with the loudest voices are championing, right? And these are people that normal Democrats, people that have voted Democrat all of their lives, are sitting back and watching. I've talked to a lot of them that live here in Western Pennsylvania, and they just find this whole movement incredibly cringeworthy and not anything that grows their coalition. In American politics, it's always about addition, not subtraction. These maneuvers are subtracting people away from you. Now, they might not vote Republican, they just won't vote at all. And you know, the messaging for the Democratic Party is a really big challenge. You have that. You have David Hogg, who's the vice chair of the party, who's now saying he's going to primary Democrat candidates or elected officials in swing districts. That's also subtraction. You don't want a further left candidate in a swing district. You want someone that's in the middle and moderate.
Selena, what did you say? What would you say to someone who were debating you that says this is not about these individuals, it's about the principles that these people have come to become emblems of? In the case of Mahmoud Khalil, they would say it's about free speech. In the case of Abbrego Garcia, they would say it's about obeying court orders. In the case of Luigi Mangione, harder to make. I'm not sure what the argument might be. But what would you say that it's more about principles than it is about people?
Well, I would say maybe you have a case for that if you haven't ascended these characters to be heroes, if you haven't made them sort of cultural icons or symbols of the left, of your party, right? They've taken it beyond the step about being principles, symbols of principles, and turned these people into anti-hero heroes. And that's the problem for them. There's too much praise for them on social media, whether it's on X or whatever people are using, right? YouTube. They've turned them in, or Blue Sky, you know, they've turned them into heroes, and they feed into each other, and the same people are sort of repeating it. But I'm watching regular Democrats saying, I don't want any part of this, especially in my state of Pennsylvania. Look what just happened to our governor.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a person, the governor of Pennsylvania, a Democrat, who's a victim of political violence. And I think when it comes to Luigi Mangione, that becomes exactly what you said. It's making a hero out of an alleged criminal. And I have to imagine, as you said, it's not just you saying it. James Carville has said these people, talking about those championing these individuals, have to be cleaved off from the Democrat Party.
Yeah, that's their biggest challenge, right? I'm old enough to remember the 60s. I'm old enough to remember how Charles Manson was made into this sort of folk hero, and he had this following, and, you know, and then there were, you know, the hippies dressing like him, right? It was like a whole thing. That didn't really work out well for Democrats for a couple presidential elections. They cleaved off those voters, and they voted for Nixon.
Right. You make a great point. Charles Manson was championed in some corners, as was Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, most notably in Rolling Stone. So it's not the first. This is absolutely a trend. And make the argument for principles when you hear Taylor Lorenz purring over Luigi Mangione. Selena Zito, always great to see you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.